Don't start that dramatic black woman routine in my lobby. Labor or not, you're not getting through. Security guard Victor Harlan thrust his palm out in a rigid stop gesture inside the hospital lobby, his arm cutting the space between the doors, and Jasmine Brooks, hunched to his right and clutching her stomach as another contraction seized her. Every night, someone like you waddles in here screaming emergency, he scoffed. You're not special. You wait like everybody else. If you can't stand, sit on the floor. Jasmine's fingers dug into the wall rail as pain tore through her. Victor Harlan had no idea he was denying entry to the one woman whose husband could end his entire career with a single phone call. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Jasmine Brooks jolted awake in her darkened bedroom, a sharp pain radiating across her abdomen. The digital clock on her nightstand glowed 11:42 p.m., casting a soft red light against the walls. She sat up slowly, her hand instinctively moving to her swollen belly as another contraction gripped her body. No, 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 she whispered, trying to steady her breathing. It's too early. She was only 34 weeks along, nowhere near her due date. The pain intensified, forcing her to grip the edge of the mattress. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she reached for her phone with trembling fingers. She pressed Marcus's contact, listening to the ring's echo in her ear. Hi, you've reached Mayor Marcus Brooks. Please leave a message. Jasmine ended the call, remembering he was giving an important speech across town at the community center's annual fundraiser. She tried again, but it went straight to voicemail. The silence of the empty house pressed in around her as another contraction hit, stronger than the last. Okay, baby, she murmured, slowly pushing herself to her feet. We can't wait for Daddy. She grabbed her pre-packed hospital bag from the closet, moving carefully down the hallway while keeping one hand against the wall for support. In the kitchen, Jasmine snatched her keys from the hook by the door, pausing to breathe through another wave of pain. The contractions were getting closer together, too close for comfort. She knew the drive to Metropolitan Hospital would take 15 minutes in normal traffic, but the late hour might work in her favor. The night air felt cool against her skin as she made her way to her car. Each step measured and deliberate. Inside the vehicle, she adjusted the seat back as far as it would go to accommodate her belly, then turned the key in the ignition. The engine's purr seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet neighborhood. Jasmine pulled out of her driveway, gripping the steering wheel tightly as she navigated the empty streets. Street lights cast alternating patterns of light and shadow across her dashboard. Another contraction forced her to pull over briefly, her knuckles white as she waited for it to pass. Just breathe, she coached herself, using the techniques she'd learned in birthing class. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The city seemed eerily deserted, with only the occasional car passing by. Each red light felt like an eternity as Jasmine waited, watching the seconds tick by on her car's digital clock. She tried Marcus's phone twice more at stoplights, but still no answer. Finally, the hospital's illuminated sign came into view. Jasmine felt a momentary surge of relief as she turned into the parking lot, finding a spot close to the emergency entrance. She gathered her bag and phone, taking a moment to compose herself before stepping out of the car. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, revealing the stark white interior of the hospital lobby. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything appear harsh and clinical. The front desk stood about 30 feet ahead, staffed by a nurse who was looking down at some paperwork. Jasmine took a few steps forward, another contraction building. She could feel beads of sweat rolling down her back as she tried to maintain her composure. The sound of her footsteps echoed off the polished floor tiles. Before she could reach the desk, movement to her left caught her attention. A security guard stepped out from behind his station, deliberately positioning himself between Jasmine and her destination. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a crisp uniform and a badge that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The guard's face hardened as he gave her a dismissive once-over, his eyes lingering on her expensive maternity dress before moving to her face. His expression shifted from suspicious to cold, his jaw setting in a rigid line. He planted his feet firmly, making it clear he had no intention of letting her pass. Jasmine felt her heart rate spike as another contraction began building. She opened her mouth to speak, to explain her situation. But the guard's stern expression and confrontational stance made the words die in her throat. The harsh overhead lights cast deep shadows across his face, emphasizing the disdain in his features as he stared down at her. Standing there under the unforgiving hospital lights, with pain radiating through her body and fear clouding her thoughts, Jasmine suddenly felt very alone. The guard's cold, dismissive demeanor spoke volumes before he'd even said a word, and she knew with crushing certainty that this was going to be a fight, one she shouldn't have to face while in labor. Security guard Harlan's stance widened as he planted himself more firmly between Jasmine and the emergency room entrance. His hand rested casually on his utility belt, but there was nothing casual about his expression. "Ma'am, the main entrance is on the other side of the building," he said, his voice carrying a sharp edge. "This is the emergency department. You can't just walk in here demanding attention." Jasmine tried to keep her voice steady despite the growing pressure in her abdomen. "I need emergency care. I'm in labor and something's wrong." "It's too early." Harlan's eyes narrowed as he gave her another dismissive look. "You look perfectly fine to me. We have actual emergencies here. Real patients who need immediate care." He gestured toward the main entrance. "Registration is that way. You'll need to follow proper procedures like everyone else." A contraction hit suddenly, forcing Jasmine to grab the nearest wall for support. Her breath came in short gasps as she tried to ride out the wave of pain. "Please," she managed to say between breaths. "My baby." Harlan cut her off, taking a step closer. "People like you always come in here with attitude, acting like you deserve better treatment than everyone else. But that's not how it works." The words, "people like you," hung in the air, their meaning unmistakable. Jasmine felt her cheeks burn with a mixture of shame and anger. Even as another contraction began building, she straightened up as much as she could, trying to maintain her dignity. "I'm not asking for special treatment," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm asking for help because I'm in active labor at 34 weeks. Please just let me through to the ER." Harlan scoffed, shaking his head. "Right, and I suppose you think you can just bypass all our protocols. There are patients in there who've been waiting their turn." He took another step forward, using his height to intimidate. "You need to go to the main entrance and check in properly." Jasmine could feel tears welling up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I can't. I can barely walk. The contractions are too close together." "Ma'am," Harlan's voice took on a patronizing tone. "If you were really in that much distress, you wouldn't be able to argue with me right now. I've seen plenty of people try to game the system." Another contraction ripped through her body, stronger than the last. Jasmine's knees buckled slightly as she clutched her stomach. "Please," she gasped. "Something's wrong. I need help now." Harlan remained unmoved, watching her struggle with cold detachment. "The rules are the rules. You're disturbing other patients who actually need emergency care." He emphasized the word, "actually," with obvious skepticism. "I am having an emergency." Jasmine's voice rose slightly with desperation, causing him to step even closer. "Lower your voice," he warned. "This is a hospital, not a marketplace. You can't make a scene here just because you don't want to follow proper procedures." Sweat dripped down Jasmine's back as she tried to steady herself against the wall. The fluorescent lights seemed to grow brighter, making her dizzy. Through the glass doors behind him, she could see nurses moving about, help so close yet completely out of reach. "I'm begging you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My baby could be in danger. Please, just let me see a doctor." Harlan crossed his arms over his chest, his badge catching the harsh overhead light. And I'm telling you to go to the main entrance. If you really need medical attention, you can get it there. After you check in properly. The pain was becoming unbearable now. Jasmine could feel her legs starting to shake as another contraction built. She tried to take a step forward, hoping to somehow make it past him to the emergency room doors, but he immediately shifted to block her path completely. Don't even think about it, he warned, his voice hard. I'm not letting you barge in there and disturb the real emergencies. Jasmine's vision began to blur as the contraction peaked. Her legs finally gave way, and she doubled over, one hand still braced against the wall while the other clutched her stomach. Through the haze of pain, she could see Harlan's polished shoes still planted firmly in front of her, his arms folded across his chest in a stance of absolute authority. He made no move to help her as she struggled to remain standing, his shadow falling across her like a physical barrier between her and the medical care she desperately needed. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the lobby as Jasmine pressed her palm against the cold wall, desperate for support. Her whole body tensed as another contraction seized her, more intense than any before. The pain radiated from her lower back through her abdomen, stealing her breath. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she tried to breathe through it. The wall's smooth surface was the only thing keeping her upright as her legs trembled beneath her. Harlan continued to watch her with obvious disdain, his arms still folded across his chest. Suddenly, warmth rushed down her legs. Jasmine looked down in horror as clear fluid splashed onto the polished tile floor, spreading in a growing puddle around her feet. Her water had broken. My water, she gasped, panic rising in her throat. Please, my water just broke. I need help now. Harlan glanced at the puddle with disgust. Great, now you're making a mess. He stepped back to avoid the liquid, his boots squeaking against the floor. That doesn't change anything. Everyone tries these tricks. Jasmine's fingers scraped against the wall as another contraction ripped through her. The pressure was becoming unbearable. She could feel her baby moving, dropping lower. With trembling steps, she tried to edge toward the doors, desperate to reach. Help. Don't even think about it, Harlan snapped, quickly moving to block her path again. A smirk crossed his face as he watched her struggle. Yeah, everyone claims an emergency when they want to cut ahead. You're not bypassing protocol. I'm begging you, Jasmine pleaded, her voice breaking. My baby's coming too early. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Tears mixed with sweat on her cheeks as she struggled to form words through the pain. Harlan's hand moved to his radio, his expression hardening. Ma'am, step back now. You're causing a disturbance. Please, she whispered, her legs shaking violently beneath her. I can't stand much longer. This is your final warning, he said, unclipping his radio. You've been refusing instructions since you arrived. I won't let you disrupt this facility. The room seemed to tilt around Jasmine as another contraction crashed over her. Her vision blurred at the edges as pain consumed her entire body. She could feel her baby moving lower, an overwhelming pressure that made her gasp. Help me, she managed to choke out. Something's wrong, please. Harlan raised the radio to his mouth, his voice cutting through the lobby's quiet hum. This is Officer Harlan at the entrance. I need backup for an uncooperative subject, refusing to follow procedures. Jasmine's fingers slid against the wall as her legs began to give way. The tile floor rushed up to meet her as she started to collapse to her knees. Through the roaring in her ears, she could hear Harlan continuing his radio call, describing her as combative and creating a scene. The fluorescent lights above seemed to pulse brighter, then dimmer as spots danced in her vision. Her body shook uncontrollably now, terror gripping her heart as she thought of her baby. She was alone in premature labor, and the one person who could help her access medical care was instead treating her like a criminal. Copy that, crackled a voice through the radio, sending additional security to your location. Harlan's boots stepped closer, the leather creaking as he moved. Now you've done it. You should have just followed the rules like everyone else. Jasmine's palms pressed against the cold tile as another contraction seized her. The puddle from her broken water had spread, soaking into her clothes. As she knelt there, she could barely hold herself up, her arms trembling with the effort. The pressure was becoming overwhelming now. Her baby was coming, ready or not, and she was kneeling on a hospital lobby floor with no medical help in sight. Tears dripped onto the tile as she fought against the rising panic. Through the glass doors, she could see medical staff moving about, completely unaware of her situation. Help was just feet away, separated by locked doors and an unmovable guard who had decided she didn't deserve emergency care. "Stay right there," Harlan commanded, as if she could move even if she wanted to. "Backup will be here soon to escort you to the proper entrance." Through tear-blurred vision, Jasmine saw a flash of blue scrubs moving quickly across the lobby. A young nurse with auburn hair pulled into a tight bun had emerged from a side hallway, her eyes widening as she took in the scene before her. "Oh my God!" The nurse broke into a run, her rubber-soled shoes squeaking against the tile. "What are you doing? She's clearly in active labor." Harlan straightened his shoulders, maintaining his authoritative stance. "Ma'am, this woman needs to follow proper admission procedures. Are you kidding me right now?" The nurse's voice rose sharply as she knelt beside Jasmine, quickly assessing her condition. "Her water's broken, she's having regular contractions, and you're blocking her from emergency care." Jasmine's body shook with another contraction as the nurse gently supported her shoulders. The pain was becoming impossible to bear, each wave stronger than the last. She could feel the nurse's steady hands checking her pulse, professional calm masking obvious anger. She was refusing to follow protocol, Harlan insisted, his voice defensive. "Creating a disruption. The only disruption here is you preventing a laboring mother from receiving emergency medical care." The nurse shot back, her face flushed with anger. She reached for the intercom panel on the wall, jabbing the button with her finger. "This is Nurse Emily Carter. I need an attending physician to the entrance immediately. We have a woman in active labor being denied entry." Harlan's face darkened. "You can't just." "I absolutely can and I am." Nurse Carter cut him off, her voice sharp enough to make him step back. "Move aside now or I'll have you reported for endangering both mother and child." She turned back to Jasmine, her tone softening. "Just breathe, honey. Help is coming. How far apart are your contractions?" Maybe 2 minutes." Jasmine managed between gasping breaths. "Getting stronger. Okay. Stay with me." The nurse squeezed her hand reassuringly. "I'm going to get you a wheelchair. Don't move." She strode purposefully toward a row of wheelchairs lined against the wall, shooting Harlan a withering glare as she passed. He shifted uncomfortably, finally taking a few steps back from his blocking position. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the lobby as two more nurses and a doctor in a white coat hurried toward them. The doctor took one look at Jasmine and immediately began barking orders. "Get her into triage now." Why wasn't she admitted immediately? His stern gaze fell on Harlan, who seemed to shrink under the scrutiny. Nurse Carter returned with the wheelchair, and together with the other nurses, they carefully helped Jasmine to her feet. Her legs barely supported her weight as they guided her into the chair. Harlan watched silently from the side, his earlier bravado completely deflated. "I've got you," Nurse Carter murmured, squeezing Jasmine's shoulder as she settled into the wheelchair. "You're safe now." For the first time since entering the hospital, Jasmine felt tears of relief rather than fear sliding down her cheeks. The crushing weight of helplessness began to lift as the medical team surrounded her with professional efficiency. The doctor held the doors open as they wheeled her through, leaving Harlan and his protocols behind in the lobby. The harsh fluorescent lighting gave way to softer illumination as they moved swiftly down the corridor. "BP's elevated," one of the nurses called out, already taking Jasmine's vitals as they moved. "Pulse is rapid." "No surprise there," Nurse Carter replied grimly, still pushing the wheelchair. How long were you in labor before coming in? She asked Jasmine gently. A few hours ago, Jasmine managed between controlled breaths. Getting worse fast. They turned down another hallway, passing through a set of double doors marked labor and delivery. The familiar hospital scent of disinfectant and sterile equipment filled the air. Here we go, Nurse Carter announced as they entered a triage room. Let's get you onto the bed. With practiced care, the medical team helped Jasmine from the wheelchair. Her legs trembled as they supported her weight, guiding her to sit on the edge of the hospital bed. Another contraction gripped her just as they were helping her lie back. Breathe through it, Nurse Carter coached, holding her hand firmly. You're doing great. The other nurses moved with quick efficiency around her, one attaching monitor leads while another prepared an IV line. The doctor stood at the foot of the bed, making notes on a tablet as he observed. Getting a fetal heartbeat, announced one nurse, adjusting the monitor. The rapid whoosh-whoosh sound filled the room, bringing fresh tears to Jasmine's eyes. Relief flooded through her as she lay back against the pillows, finally receiving the medical care she desperately needed. The immediate terror of being denied help began to fade, replaced by the normal fears of impending delivery. Nurse Carter stayed by her side, her presence steady and reassuring as the team continued their assessments. The horror of the lobby confrontation still lingered, but for now Jasmine could focus on what mattered most, safely delivering her baby. The steady beep of monitors filled the triage room as Jasmine lay back against the thin hospital pillows, her body still trembling from the earlier ordeal. The immediate crisis had passed, but exhaustion weighed heavily on her limbs. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the medical equipment surrounding her bed. Through the thin curtain barrier, movement and hushed voices caught her attention. Jasmine recognized Harlan's deep voice, now taking on an official tone that made her stomach clench with anxiety. She became immediately hostile when I attempted to direct her to proper admissions, he was saying. Refused to follow basic protocols and began causing a disturbance in the lobby. Jasmine's hands gripped the scratchy hospital blanket. Every word he spoke twisted the truth of what had happened, painting a completely different picture than the terrifying reality she had endured. Subject was yelling, making threats, and attempted to force her way through security measures, he continued. I maintained professional composure while she displayed increasingly aggressive behavior. A rush of dizziness washed over her as she listened to the lies. The monitor beside her bed registered her quickening pulse with more frequent beeps. How could he stand there and completely fabricate events that had happened less than an hour ago? Had to call for backup due to her confrontational attitude, Harlan added. She was deliberately ignoring instructions and creating a scene that disturbed other patients. Other voices joined in, speaking in low tones that barely carried through the curtain. Jasmine strained to hear, her heart pounding harder with each snippet that reached her ears. Always the same with them. One voice muttered, coming in here acting entitled. Another voice agreed. Some black women just think they deserve special treatment, probably trying to jump the line ahead of real emergencies, a third voice added. Tears burned in Jasmine's eyes as the weight of their words pressed down on her chest. The prejudice in their casual conversation was like a physical blow. She had nearly collapsed in that lobby, her water broken, in desperate need of medical care. And now they were painting her as an angry, entitled woman making unreasonable demands. The monitor's beeping increased again as panic started to set in. These weren't just cruel words. This false narrative could have serious consequences. How would it affect her ongoing care? What if there were complications? Would staff take her concerns seriously, or would they view everything through the lens of this fabricated report? More importantly, what would happen to other women who came after her? If Harlan's lies were accepted as truth, they would only reinforce the prejudices that had nearly cost her and her baby's safety tonight. The voices moved further down the hall, but their impact remained heavy and suffocating in the small triage room. Jasmine's hands shook as she reached for her phone on the bedside table, She needed Marcus, needed his strength, his advocacy, his unwavering support. A young nurse entered, different from Nurse Carter who had helped her earlier. This one barely made eye contact as she moved to check the IV line. Her movements efficient but cool. Jasmine wondered if she had been part of the group outside, if she too now saw her as just another entitled patient causing problems. The nurse adjusted the drip rate with quick practiced movements. "Try to rest," she said flatly, still not meeting Jasmine's eyes. "Doctor will be in to check you soon." Jasmine nodded silently, not trusting her voice. As the nurse left, closing the curtain behind her with a metallic scraping sound, Jasmine's trembling fingers found Marcus's number in her phone. The screen blurred through her tears as she pressed dial. Each ring seemed to echo Harlan's lies, the staff's whispers, the weight of prejudice that had nearly prevented her from reaching help. She needed to tell Marcus everything, not just about the guard's actions, but about how he was now trying to cover it up. How the staff were already accepting his version of events without question. The IV needle shifted uncomfortably in her arm as she held the phone, waiting for Marcus to answer. Outside her curtained room, footsteps passed by, more staff members who might have heard Harlan's story, who might already have formed their opinions about her based on his lies. The phone continued to ring as Jasmine silently prayed for her husband to pick up. She needed him here, needed someone to witness what was happening, to help her fight back against this false narrative before it became accepted as truth. Her other hand protectively cradled her belly, feeling another contraction building. Her baby would be born into this world of prejudice and assumptions where even a mother in desperate need could be painted as aggressive and entitled simply because of her race. The ringtone suddenly cut off as Marcus's voice came through the speaker. Jasmine's hand shook harder as she prepared to tell him everything. The triage room door burst open as Marcus Brooks rushed in, still wearing his formal speech attire, his tie loose and askew, his eyes widening at the sight of Jasmine connected to monitors, her face drawn with exhaustion and tear-streaked. "What happened?" He crossed the room in 2 quick strides, taking her hand. "I got your message and came as fast as I could." Jasmine's composure cracked as she gripped his hand. "Marcus, they wouldn't let me in. The guard blocked me from getting help. I was having contractions. My water broke right there in the lobby, and he just stood there." Marcus's expression darkened as Jasmine recounted everything, Harlan's dismissive treatment, his accusations, and now the false report he was spreading through the hospital. His jaw clenched tighter with each detail. "And now they're out there talking about me like I'm some angry black woman who was trying to cause trouble." Jasmine's voice broke. "They're believing his lies without even questioning them. This ends now." Marcus pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. Within minutes, the hospital administrator on call and the night supervisor appeared in the doorway, their faces masks of professional concern. Mayor Brooks, the administrator, Drive, Reynolds, stepped forward. "We understand there was some confusion during Mrs. Brooks's admission process." Confusion. Marcus's voice was controlled, but carried an edge that made both administrators straighten. "My wife was in active labor, clearly in distress. And your security staff denied her emergency medical care. That's not confusion. That's negligence." The supervisor, a thin woman named Ms. Grant, cleared her throat. According to the security report, Mrs. Brooks was confrontational and refused to follow standard admission protocols. "That's a lie," Jasmine interjected, her heart rate monitor beeping faster. "I was begging for help. I could barely stand." "Mrs. Brooks, please try to stay calm, Drive," Reynolds said smoothly. "We understand you were under stress, but our security staff are trained professionals who follow strict protocols." "I don't care about your protocols," Marcus cut in. "I care about the fact that my wife could have given birth in your lobby because your guard decided to profile her instead of help her." Ms. Grant's expression tightened. "Mayor Brooks, that's a very serious accusation. Our staff would never." "Never what?" Marcus stepped closer to them. Never discriminate, never abuse their authority, never file false reports to cover up their actions. The administrators exchanged glances. Dr. Reynolds spread his hands in a placating gesture. Mayor Brooks, I assure you, we take all patient concerns seriously. We'll conduct a thorough review of the incident. You're damn right you will, Marcus said. Because I'm filing a formal complaint and I want to see every second of security footage from that lobby. Ms. Grant's professional smile slipped slightly. Mr. Mayor, perhaps we could discuss this at a more appropriate time, when emotions aren't running quite so high. The appropriate time was when my wife needed emergency medical care, Marcus replied. Instead, your staff left her suffering while they made assumptions based on how she looks. Dr. Reynolds cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mayor Brooks, we all want what's best for Mrs. Brooks and your baby. Escalating this situation unnecessarily could have unfortunate consequences. Are you threatening me? Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. Ms. Grant stepped closer, lowering her voice. Sir, you have a promising political career ahead of you. Getting involved in a controversial discrimination claim could damage your future prospects. I'm sure we can find a way to address your concerns more discreetly. The implication hung heavy in the air. They were offering to sweep it under the rug to protect both the hospital's reputation and Marcus's political standing, at the cost of burying the truth about what had happened to Jasmine. Marcus's expression hardened. My wife and child were put at risk because of your staff's prejudice. If you think I care more about political prospects than their safety, you don't know me at all. A contraction gripped Jasmine and she gasped, squeezing Marcus's hand. The monitor's beeping increased sharply. A nurse hurried in, checking the readings. We need to move her to delivery, the nurse announced, already preparing to unlock the bed's wheels. Dr. Reynolds nodded quickly, seemingly relieved for the interruption. We'll continue this discussion later, Mayor Brooks. Right now, let's focus on your wife's immediate care. As the administrators retreated and medical staff began preparing for the move, Marcus leaned close to Jasmine, squeezing her hand. His touch conveyed everything words couldn't: his love, his support, his determination to fight for her. The bed's wheels squeaked as nurses began to move it toward the delivery room. Jasmine held tight to Marcus's hand, drawing strength from his presence, even as another contraction built. They had both heard the unspoken threat in the administrator's words, the clear intention to suppress the truth about what had happened. The delivery room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as nurses wheeled Jasmine's bed into position. The room smelled of antiseptic and rubber gloves, sterile and cold, despite the warmth of the medical equipment humming around them. Marcus hadn't let go of her hand since the confrontation with the administrators, his presence a shield against the sideways glances from hospital staff. Between contractions, Jasmine gripped Marcus's hand tighter. They're going to try to hide what happened, she whispered, her voice tight with both pain and determination. We can't let them. We won't, Marcus promised, wiping sweat from her forehead with a cool cloth. But right now, focus on bringing our baby into the world. That's all that matters. Another contraction seized her, stronger than before. Jasmine's back arched as she breathed through the pain, using the techniques she'd learned in birthing class. The nurses moved efficiently around them, but their usual cheerful chatter was noticeably absent. Instead, they worked in tense silence, their expressions carefully neutral. You're doing great, Marcus murmured, ignoring the staff's cool demeanor. Just like we practiced. Breathe through it. Hours passed in a blur of pain and determination. The delivery room clock ticked steadily toward dawn as Jasmine labored. Through it all, she felt the weight of Harlan's lies hanging over them. Every time a new nurse came in, every time they checked her charts, she saw the hesitation in their eyes, the prejudice that had already taken root from his false report. I see the head, the doctor announced finally, positioned at the foot of the bed. One more big push, Mrs. Brooks. Jasmine gathered her remaining strength, squeezing Marcus's hand so hard she might have broken bones. With a final tremendous effort, she pushed, the room filled with the strong, healthy cry of their newborn daughter. "She's perfect," the doctor said, lifting the baby for them to see. 6 pounds, 12 ounces. Relief and joy flooded through Jasmine as they placed her daughter on her chest. Her tiny face was scrunched and red, her cries fierce and determined. She touched her cheek with trembling fingers, marveling at her perfect features. "She's beautiful," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like her mama." The medical team worked quickly to clean and examine the baby, their professional masks slipping slightly in the face of new life. But even this moment of joy couldn't completely erase the undercurrent of tension. Jasmine noticed how the nurses documented everything with extra detail, how they seemed to be watching her reactions more closely than usual. "I need to step out for a minute," Marcus said once they were settled, kissing Jasmine's forehead. "I want to start the complaint process before they have time to get their story straight." Jasmine nodded, cradling their daughter closer. "Be careful, they're already trying to cover it up." Marcus's footsteps faded down the hall as Jasmine focused on her newborn. The early morning sunlight was just beginning to peek through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. Her daughter's tiny hand wrapped around her finger, her grip surprisingly strong. Through the partially open door, she could hear snippets of conversation from the nurse's station. Words like liability and protocol drifted in along with hushed mentions of the mayor's wife and potential media attention. A young nurse entered with a clipboard, her movements stiff and formal. "We need to document everything for the birth certificate," she said, not quite meeting Jasmine's eyes. "And there are some additional forms regarding the admission incident." "You mean when your security guard denied me emergency care?" Jasmine asked quietly, her daughter still nestled against her chest. The nurse's discomfort was visible. "I'm just here to collect the necessary paperwork, Mrs. Brooks." Through the window, Jasmine could see Marcus in the parking lot below, pacing as he spoke on his phone. Even from this distance, his tension was evident in every movement. She knew he was already fighting for her, for their daughter, for the truth. The warmth of the morning sun filled more of the room, but Jasmine felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hospital's air conditioning. Her daughter squirmed in her arms, reminding her of everything that could have gone wrong. How differently this morning might have ended if that nurse hadn't intervened in the lobby. She held her baby closer, breathing in her new life scent, trying to focus on the miracle in her arms rather than the battle ahead. But the joy of motherhood was shadowed by the knowledge that somewhere in this hospital, people were already working to discredit her story, to protect themselves at the expense of truth and justice. The sun's rays touched her daughter's face, highlighting her perfect features. She was here, she was healthy, and she was safe. But the relief of her safe arrival couldn't completely overcome the uncertainty that hung in the air like the antiseptic smell, sharp, clinical, and unavoidable. The late morning sun streamed through the hospital room window as Jasmine sat propped against a stack of pillows. Marcus perched on the edge of her bed, frowning at the tablet in his hands. The complaint form's blue light reflected off his glasses as he carefully typed their account of last night's events. "We need to be precise," Marcus said, his mayor's voice replaced by the protective tone he reserved for family. "Every detail matters." He paused, looking up at Jasmine. "Are you sure you're up for this right now? You should be resting." "I need to do this while everything's fresh," Jasmine replied, adjusting her hospital gown. Their daughter slept peacefully in the clear bassinet beside her bed. "If we wait, they'll say my memory isn't reliable." Marcus nodded, returning to the form. Time of arrival, about 11:45 p.m. Jasmine closed her eyes, remembering the harsh lobby lights, Harlan's cold stare. As they worked through the complaint, a young nurse, the same one who had helped Jasmine in the lobby, poked her head in. Her name tag read Emily. She glanced nervously down the hallway before stepping inside. "Mrs. Brooks." Emily wrung her hands. I saw what happened last night. The guard had no right to treat you that way. I want to make a statement. Nurse Carter. A sharp voice cut through the air. The hospital's chief administrator stood in the doorway, her perfectly pressed suit a stark contrast to Emily's rumpled scrubs. A word, please. Now. Emily's face paled. She shot Jasmine an apologetic look before following the administrator out. Through the partially open door, they could hear the administrator's clipped tones. Meeting in my office immediately. They're already circling the wagons, Marcus muttered, his jaw tight. He typed faster, documenting Emily's attempted statement and the administrator's intervention. Minutes ticked by. Hospital staff moved past their door, some peering in with poorly concealed curiosity. Others whispered to each other, quickly looking away when Jasmine met their eyes. Harlan's false report had clearly made the rounds, painting her as an angry, entitled troublemaker. A different nurse entered to check Jasmine's vitals, her movements brusque and impersonal. She barely spoke, recording numbers with mechanical efficiency before hurrying out. The message was clear: Jasmine was now a liability, someone to be handled with distant professionalism rather than care. I'm calling David, Marcus said suddenly, pulling out his phone. He's the best private investigator in the city. We need to get ahead of this before they destroy evidence. Jasmine watched him pace by the window as he spoke in low, urgent tones. Their daughter stirred, making small snuffling sounds. She reached for her, grateful for her warm weight in her arms. Emily never returned to their room. When they glimpsed her later at the nurse's station, she kept her head down. Her earlier willingness to speak replaced by tense silence. The sight made Jasmine's stomach clench. Throughout the afternoon, the pressure grew more obvious. A hospital risk management officer stopped by, all artificial smiles and carefully chosen words suggesting that misunderstandings could be resolved internally. Security cameras in the lobby were suddenly under maintenance. Even the cleaning staff seemed to have been briefed. They worked quickly and silently, avoiding eye contact. They're trying to isolate us, Jasmine observed as another staff member hurried past their door. Make us feel crazy for questioning their version of events. Marcus squeezed her hand. Let them try. David is already pulling security footage from nearby businesses. If they think they can bury this. A soft knock interrupted him. An older nurse entered with paperwork, her face pinched with disapproval. Your discharge instructions, she said curtly, dropping the papers on the bedside table. And a reminder about the hospital's media relations policy. We didn't say anything about media, Jasmine pointed out. The nurse's expression tightened further. Just making sure everyone understands proper procedures. Unlike last night, Marcus stood, his patience visibly wearing thin. Are you suggesting my wife was wrong to seek emergency care while in labor? I'm not suggesting anything, Mr. Mayor. The nurse's tone could have frozen water. I'm simply doing my job, unlike some people who think rules don't apply to them. She left before Marcus could respond. I need to call David again, Marcus said, running a hand through his hair. The faster we get independent documentation, the better. Their daughter began to fuss, rooting against Jasmine's chest. She adjusted her gown to feed her, finding comfort in this simple act of nurturing amid the growing tension. The natural process felt like a quiet rebellion against the sterile hostility surrounding them. Go, she told Marcus. I've got this. She looked down at their nursing daughter, drawing strength from her perfect innocence. Whatever battle lay ahead, she would face it to ensure no other mother endured what she had. Marcus paused at the door. We'll get to the truth, he promised. No matter what it takes. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hospital parking lot as Marcus helped Jasmine into their car. Their newborn daughter slept peacefully in her car seat, tiny fingers curled into fists. The discharge process had been tense and rushed with staff clearly eager to see them leave. Home. Jasmine sighed with relief as Marcus carefully navigated through morning traffic. She noticed him checking his phone at stoplights, his forehead creasing deeper each time. "What is it?" she asked. "The story is already spreading." Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Social media, local news sites, community forums, everyone has an opinion. By the time they arrived home, Jasmine's phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. She settled into their living room couch, cradling their daughter while Marcus brought up the local news website on their TV. Mayor's wife claims discrimination at city hospital. The headline blazed. The comment section below churned with reactions. Always playing the race card. Hospitals have protocols for a reason. She probably walked in demanding VIP treatment because her husband's the mayor. If she was really in that much pain, she would have called an ambulance. Jasmine's hands shook as she scrolled through her phone. Facebook groups were lighting up with debates. Twitter threads dissected every aspect of her story. Some people questioned why she drove herself. Others suggested she was exaggerating for attention. "Listen to this one," Marcus said, his voice tight with anger. Maybe if she hadn't acted so entitled, security wouldn't have had to step in. These people always want special treatment. He threw his phone onto the couch. These people, they don't even know you. But amid the vitriol, other voices emerged. A woman named Patricia shared her story of being ignored in the same hospital's emergency room while having a heart attack. Another patient, Marcus Williams, described similar treatment from the same security guard 3 months ago. "Marcus, look," Jasmine pointed to a growing Facebook thread. "It's not just me. This has been happening for years." Their daughter stirred and Jasmine adjusted her against her shoulder. More stories poured in. Delayed treatment, dismissive staff, security guards profiling patients. The hospital's perfect facade was cracking as people finally spoke up. By midday, local news vans parked along their street. Marcus fielded calls from reporters while Jasmine tried to rest. But peace was hard to find as her phone kept lighting up with notifications. Playing the victim while getting VIP treatment. Pathetic. Must be nice having the mayor pull strings for you. Bet she's loving all this attention. Don't read them, Marcus advised. But Jasmine couldn't look away. The truth of her experience was being twisted, rewritten by strangers who weren't there. Early afternoon brought a call from David, their investigator. Marcus put him on speaker. "The security footage is interesting," David said. "Or rather, what's missing is interesting. There are gaps in the lobby feed exactly during your arrival time. The hospital claims it's routine maintenance, but my contact in IT says otherwise. They're covering their tracks," Marcus concluded. "Not just that," David continued. "Security guard Harlan's written report was backdated. He didn't file it until after you announced your complaint. And get this, 3 other incident reports involving him have vanished from the system in the last 24 hours. Jasmine closed her eyes, remembering Harlan's smirk as she collapsed. "They're erasing everything." More calls came in as the afternoon wore on, community leaders wanting statements, hospital board members sending carefully worded messages about reviewing protocols, city council members hinting at possible investigations. Their daughter woke hungry, and Jasmine retreated to the nursery for quiet. The pale blue walls and soft light created a peaceful bubble. But even here, she couldn't escape reality. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emily, the nurse who had tried to help. "I'm so sorry. They made me sign a non-disclosure agreement, but I know what I saw." Marcus appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, looking exhausted. The hospital's PR team just released a statement defending their security protocols. They're framing it as a simple misunderstanding of standard procedures. Standard procedures. Jasmine's voice cracked. "I could have lost our baby." Their daughter finished nursing, her eyes heavy with sleep. Jasmine rose carefully and placed her in her crib, her heart aching at her innocent expression. All she'd wanted was to safely deliver her child. Instead, she'd stumbled into a fight that was growing bigger by the hour. Marcus's phone rang again, his face darkening as he listened. "I'll be right there," he said tersely, ending the call. He turned to Jasmine, worry etched across his features. "We need to talk." Evening shadows stretched across their living room as Jasmine and Marcus sat on the couch, surrounded by David's preliminary investigation notes. Their newborn slept peacefully in her bassinet nearby while they pored over the documents. "Look at this pattern," Marcus said, pointing to a timeline David had constructed. 6 similar complaints about the same guard in the past year, all mysteriously resolved with no formal record. Jasmine rubbed her tired eyes. "And all from minority patients." The coffee table was covered with witness statements, hospital policies, and security logs. David had been thorough, building a clear picture of systematic discrimination. "The city council hearing is at 10 tomorrow, Marcus said, checking his phone. "David says we should be ready for pushback. The hospital's bringing their legal team." Jasmine touched her throat, anxiety building. "I just need to tell the truth. They can't deny what happened." "They'll try." Marcus's jaw tightened. The hospital administrator called again, offering to resolve this quietly. "Said it would be better for everyone." "Better for them, you mean?" Jasmine lifted their daughter from her bassinet as she began to stir. "How many others have they silenced?" They spent hours preparing her testimony, carefully documenting every detail of that night. Marcus insisted she try to sleep, but Jasmine lay awake, rehearsing her statement. The truth seemed so clear, so undeniable. How could anyone twist it? Morning arrived too quickly. Jasmine's mother came to watch the baby while they headed downtown. The city council chambers were already packed when they arrived. Hospital administrators sat in a tight cluster, their lawyers whispering among themselves. "Remember," Marcus squeezed her hand. "Just speak your truth." The council chairman called the session to order. Jasmine's heart pounded as he explained the purpose of the hearing, to address allegations of discriminatory practices at City General Hospital. Before Jasmine could be called to testify, the hospital's lead attorney stood. "If I may, council members, we'd like to present some relevant evidence first." The chairman nodded, and the attorney gestured to an assistant who dimmed the lights. A projection screen lowered from the ceiling. "This security footage shows the actual events of the night in question," the attorney announced smoothly. Jasmine's stomach dropped as grainy video filled the screen. The timestamp showed her arrival at the hospital, but something was wrong. The footage jumped and skipped, showing only fragments of the confrontation. In these carefully selected clips, Jasmine appeared to be gesturing wildly, her face contorted in what could be interpreted as anger rather than pain. The audio was even worse. Her pleas for help were cut out, leaving only moments that, taken out of context, made her sound demanding and aggressive. Harlan's dismissive comments and blocking actions were nowhere to be seen. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. Jasmine felt the stares, the judgments, the assumptions. Her cheeks burned as she watched this twisted version of events paint her as exactly what Harlan had accused her of being: entitled, aggressive, unreasonable. "As you can see," the attorney continued, "hospital security followed standard protocols while dealing with a difficult situation. Any claims of discrimination are clearly unfounded." Marcus's hand found hers, squeezing tight. She could feel him trembling with anger beside her. The chairman turned to Jasmine. "Mrs. Brooks, would you like to respond to this evidence?" She stood on shaking legs, but before she could speak, the hospital's attorney interrupted. "We have additional footage if the council requires it." More edited clips played, each one carefully crafted to support their false narrative. Jasmine watched helplessly as her experience was erased and rewritten before her eyes. The truth of her pain, her fear, her desperate need for help, all replaced by this manufactured version of events. Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some wouldn't meet her eyes. Others wore expressions of skepticism that cut deep into her heart. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded small in the large chamber. "That's not what happened. They've edited the footage. They've removed." "Are you suggesting the hospital falsified evidence?" The attorney interrupted, his tone dripping with condescension. I'm saying it's not complete. It doesn't show. The timestamp is continuous, Mrs. Brooks. Are you perhaps misremembering due to the stress of your condition? Jasmine felt the room spinning. Every word she spoke seemed to sink her deeper. The attorney had an answer for everything, twisting her responses until she hardly recognized her own experience. The hearing dragged on, becoming an exercise in humiliation. Hospital staff testified about their professional protocols and commitment to equal treatment. Each statement pushed the truth further away, burying it under layers of bureaucratic justification. Marcus maintained a stoic expression, but Jasmine could feel his mounting fury. When his phone buzzed with a text from David, he checked it discreetly. Don't react. Got a tip about unedited footage. Full surveillance archive exists. Call me ASAP. The chairman called for a brief recess. As people filed out of the chamber, Marcus helped Jasmine to her feet. Her legs felt weak, her spirit crushed by the weight of institutional power aligned against her. I should have known they'd do this, she whispered, fighting back tears. They had hours of footage to work with. They could make it show whatever they wanted. Marcus's arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders as they walked toward the exit. This isn't over, he promised, his voice low and determined. We're not letting their lies win. Not this time. The parking garage was nearly empty when Marcus pulled in just after midnight. He killed the engine but left the keys in the ignition, scanning the shadows between concrete pillars. David's text had been specific. Level 3, Section D, midnight sharp. A figure emerged from behind a support column, young, probably mid-20s, wearing hospital scrubs under a heavy jacket. The IT staffer David had mentioned. She glanced nervously over her shoulder as she approached Marcus's car. Mayor Brooks. Her voice shook slightly. I'm Lisa from IT. Marcus stepped out, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Thank you for meeting me. We don't have much time. Lisa pulled a small external hard drive from her jacket pocket. I copied everything from the past week, the original footage before they edited it. They don't know I have access to the backup servers. Her hands trembled as she passed him the drive. They're planning to wipe the backups tomorrow morning, standard system maintenance. Once that's done, their edited version becomes the only version. Marcus carefully tucked the drive into his inner coat pocket. Why are you helping us? Lisa's eyes darted around the garage again. Because I saw what really happened. I was monitoring the cameras that night. And, she swallowed hard. My sister went through something similar last year. Same guard. Nobody believed her either. We'll protect your identity, Marcus assured her. David knows how to handle this. Just be careful. Lisa backed away, already moving toward the stairwell. They've got people everywhere, IT security, administration. They all work together to make problems disappear. Marcus watched until she was safely gone before driving home, taking a winding route to ensure he wasn't followed. His heart pounded the entire way, the drive feeling like it was burning through his pocket. Jasmine was waking up when he arrived, their daughter finally asleep after a long evening of fussing. Did you get it? Marcus pulled out the drive, holding it like it might shatter. Everything from that night, unedited. They moved to his home office, closing the door quietly. Marcus connected the drive to his laptop while Jasmine perched on the edge of his desk chair, tension visible in every line of her body. The first video file opened to show the hospital lobby from multiple angles. The timestamp matched the moment Jasmine had arrived, but this time the footage played smoothly without suspicious jumps or cuts. They watched in silence as the scene unfolded in its raw entirety, Jasmine entering clearly in distress, Harlan's immediate hostile posture, his deliberate move to block her path. Every dismissive gesture and cruel comment came through with perfect clarity. Turn up the audio, Jasmine whispered. Harlan's voice filled the room. People like you always think you deserve special treatment. His sneering tone was unmistakable. The footage continued relentlessly. Jasmine doubled over with contractions while he stood watching, her water breaking on the floor, her desperate attempts to explain between waves of pain, Harlan's radio call deliberately misrepresenting the situation. Marcus's hands clenched into fists as they watched. The truth was there in high definition, not just discrimination, but calculated cruelty. Every moment revealing the guard's deliberate choice to deny care to a woman in labor. Look at this angle. Jasmine pointed to one feed. You can see him smirking while I'm begging for help. They watched through to the end, the nurse's intervention, Harlan's immediate shift to defensive lies, the gathering of administrators to begin the cover-up. 4 camera angles captured every moment from multiple perspectives, leaving no room for doubt or denial. This is everything we need, Marcus said, already copying the files. The press conference is at 2 tomorrow. This will blow their whole story apart. Jasmine touched the screen where her past self struggled to remain standing. All those people at the hearing who looked at me like I was lying, they need to see this. They spent the next hour preparing multiple backup copies of the footage, organizing the most damning clips into a clear timeline. Marcus called David to begin coordinating with the media team. We should get some sleep, Marcus said finally, checking the time. Tomorrow's going to be intense. He carefully placed the original drive in his desk drawer, engaging the lock with a solid click. For the first time since the hearing, Jasmine's shoulders relaxed slightly. We have proof, she said softly, as if afraid to believe it. They can't bury this anymore. Marcus pulled her close, feeling her exhaustion in the way she leaned against him. No more lies. No more twisting the truth. Tomorrow, everyone sees exactly what happened. The night felt different now, the weight of helplessness lifting just enough to let hope seep in. In the nursery next door, their daughter made quiet sleeping sounds. The proof was secure, the truth preserved in unedited pixels, waiting for morning's light to expose what should never have been hidden. The afternoon sun streamed through the living room windows, casting warm light across the papers spread across Marcus's desk. He adjusted his tie, reviewing his prepared statement one last time, while Jasmine gently rocked their newborn daughter nearby. The press conference would start in less than 2 hours. I'll present the unedited footage first, Marcus said, reaching for his desk drawer. Then your statement, followed by questions. The truth will be impossible to deny once people see what really happened. The key turned smoothly in the lock, but when Marcus pulled the drawer open, his heart stopped. The drive wasn't there. No, he muttered, rifling through the drawer's contents. No, no, no. Jasmine looked up sharply. What's wrong? The drive. Marcus yanked the drawer completely out, dumping its contents onto the desk. It's gone. That's impossible. Jasmine stood carefully, cradling their sleeping daughter. You locked it in there last night. We both saw you. Marcus was already calling David, their investigator. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried again immediately. Someone had to have broken in, Marcus said, pacing now. The lock shows no signs of damage, but they must have. His phone buzzed with an incoming text from David. Can't reach Lisa. She's not at work. No one's seen her since last night. Jasmine sank into the nearest chair, her face draining of color. They got to her. We don't know that, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. He dialed David again. The baby stirred, making small distressed sounds that mirrored the growing tension in the room. Jasmine rocked her gently, trying to keep her own rising panic from disturbing her further. Marcus's phone chimed with a news alert, his hands shook slightly as he opened it. Official statement from Metropolitan Hospital Board of Directors. He read aloud, his voice growing tighter with each word. Regarding false allegations made by Mayor Brooks. Jasmine closed her eyes. What are they saying? They're claiming. Marcus had to stop, his jaw clenching. They're saying I attempted to coerce hospital staff into fabricating evidence, that I'm manufacturing a racial controversy for political gain. They're calling it a hoax. Jasmine's voice cracked. They say they have proof I offered bribes to IT staff to create doctored footage. Marcus's phone was buzzing constantly now with messages from his staff, reporters, city council members. They're painting this as a calculated attempt to damage the hospital's reputation. But we saw the real footage. Jasmine clutched their daughter closer. We know what happened. Without that drive, Marcus trailed off, running his hands through his hair in frustration. His phone rang, the hospital's chief administrator. Marcus let it go to voicemail, already knowing it would be a thinly veiled threat wrapped in professional courtesy. The baby began to cry in earnest now, picking up on her mother's distress. Jasmine tried to soothe her, but her own hands were shaking too badly. They're going to bury this, she whispered. Just like they buried all those other cases, all those other women who tried to speak up. Marcus knelt beside her chair, wrapping an arm around both her and their daughter. We're not letting them win. But they already are. Tears spilled down Jasmine's cheeks. They have all the power, all the influence. They can make whatever story they want stick, and people will believe them because they're the ones in authority. Who's going to believe us now? The baby's cries grew louder, echoing through the suddenly too quiet house. Outside, they could hear cars pulling up, probably reporters responding to the hospital's statement. I can't. Jasmine's voice broke completely. I can't let them turn me into a liar. Turn this into some kind of scheme. That night was real. What that guard did to me was real. Our daughter could have died because of their prejudice. And now they're going to pretend none of it happened. Marcus held them tighter as Jasmine began to sob, her whole body shaking with the force of her grief and rage. Their daughter wailed between them, tiny fists waving in distress. I promise you, Marcus said fiercely, his own eyes wet with tears of fury. This isn't over. I don't care what it costs me politically. I don't care what they try to do to my reputation. We're going to find a way to expose the truth. But, Jasmine could barely hear him through her sobs. All the fear and trauma of that horrible night crashing back over her. Harlan's sneering face, the pain, the terror for her baby's life. And now they were trying to erase it all, to paint her as a liar and her husband as a manipulator. Marcus gathered his wife and daughter closer, trying to shelter them both as camera flashes began lighting up their front windows. We're not stopping, he whispered. No matter what it takes, we're not stopping until justice is served. The evening shadows lengthened across the living room as Jasmine sat motionless on the couch. The house was finally quiet, their daughter sleeping peacefully in her nursery after hours of fussing. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Marcus paced nearby, still making calls, still trying to salvage something from this disaster. But with each passing hour, their hopes seemed to dim further. The hospital's accusations dominated every local news channel, their carefully crafted narrative spreading like poison through the community. Jasmine closed her eyes, replaying the terrible night in her mind, Harlan's cold eyes, the pain, the fear. But suddenly, another face emerged from her memories, the young nurse who had finally helped her, who had shouted at Harlan and rushed her to safety. Marcus, she said suddenly, sitting up straighter. The nurse, the one who found me in the lobby. He paused mid-stride. What about her? She saw everything. Jasmine's voice grew stronger. She's not under the hospital's direct control like the other witnesses. And she was furious with the guard. I remember how she yelled at him. Marcus set down his phone. Do you know her name? Emily Carter. The name came back clearly now. She wrote it on the whiteboard in my room. She was so kind during the delivery. But then, Jasmine frowned. I didn't see her again after management pulled her aside for that meeting. Within minutes, David's investigator had an address. They debated waiting until morning, but decided they couldn't risk the hospital getting to her first. After arranging for Marcus's mother to watch the baby, they drove through the darkening streets to a modest apartment complex on the city's east side. Emily Carter lived on the third floor. When she opened her door to their knock, her eyes widened in recognition. She glanced nervously down the hallway before quickly ushering them inside. "I've been hoping you'd come," she said, wringing her hands. "But I was afraid to reach out. They've been watching everyone so closely since that night." Her small apartment was neat but sparsely furnished. She gestured for them to sit on a worn sofa while she perched anxiously on a kitchen chair. "They threatened your job, didn't they?" Marcus asked gently. Emily nodded, twisting her fingers together. "More than that, they said they'd make sure I never worked in healthcare again. That they'd claim I was negligent with patients." She swallowed hard. "I have student loans, my mom's medical bills to help pay. I couldn't." "We understand," Jasmine said softly. "You did everything you could that night. You saved us." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "But I should have done more. The things they're saying about you now, it's all lies. I was there. I saw how that guard treated you. How he blocked you from getting help." She stopped, taking a shaky breath. "Would you be willing to make a statement?" Marcus asked. "Tell what you witnessed." Emily stood suddenly, moving to retrieve her phone from her purse. "I can do better than that." Her hands trembled slightly as she unlocked the screen. "The second I saw how that guard was acting, I knew something was wrong," she explained, scrolling through her files. "I've seen them cover up incidents before, seen them twist things around to protect themselves. So I pulled out my phone and started recording as soon as I came around the corner." She found the video and pressed play. The footage was slightly shaky but clear, shot from an angle that showed the entire confrontation. There was Jasmine, obviously in distress, gripping the wall for support. Harlan's aggressive stance as he blocked her path, the moment her water broke, his callous smirk as she begged for help. The audio captured every cruel word, every dismissive comment. "I kept recording even after we got you to triage," Emily said quietly. It caught the guard making his false report. The other staff's comments. Everything. Jasmine's hand found Marcus's, squeezing tightly as they watched. The evidence was undeniable, irrefutable, everything they needed to expose the truth. "Why didn't you come forward with this sooner?" Marcus asked, though his tone held no accusation.